All right, so to really get our heads around one of the most miraculous events in history, we've got to start at one of the absolute lowest points. We're in the period right after what's known as the Year of Sorrow, a time of just immense grief for the Prophet Muhammad. He'd lost his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, who was his protector. His two biggest supporters gone, and the hostility back in Mecca was really hitting a fever pitch.
This prayer, which we're going to circle back to, it just perfectly captures the moment. It's so raw, so vulnerable. It's a plea from a man who feels completely and utterly alone and powerless. And believe me, it sets the stage for everything that's about to happen.
So, with his entire support system in Mecca pretty much dismantled, the prophet starts looking for a new sanctuary. He turns his hopes to the nearby city of Taif. He was thinking, maybe they would offer him protection. Maybe they would listen to his message. This wasn't just some random trip. It was a desperate search for a new beginning.
Now, what's fascinating here is just how much planning went into this. Nothing was random. We're talking about a 100-kilometer journey on foot, a grueling 4-day trek through the mountains, all to avoid being noticed in Mecca. He goes with only his adopted son Zayd, and his strategy was to go straight to the top, to the leaders of Taif, hoping if he got them on his side, the rest of the city would follow.
But the reception he got was catastrophic. He meets with 3 of the city's main leaders, and each rejection is just colder and harsher than the last. The sources tell us one of them actually mocked him to his face, sarcastically asking, "Did God not find anyone else to send but you?" I mean, can you imagine? A complete and humiliating shutdown.
And it got so much worse. It didn't stop with verbal abuse. When the prophet asked them to at least keep his visit a secret, just to avoid more trouble from Mecca, they flat out refused. Instead, they actually sent a messenger to tell his enemies, and then did something unimaginable. They got the town's children and slaves to attack him. They were literally chased and stoned out of the city.
And this really tells you everything about his mindset. He's bleeding, he's exhausted, he's just been run out of town, and he and Zayd finally find a little bit of shelter in an orchard. This is where he made that prayer from the beginning. But the most powerful line is this one. After everything he just went through, his only real concern was whether he had somehow displeased God. His own suffering was secondary.
And it's right here, at this absolute rock bottom, that the whole narrative takes this incredible, dramatic turn. This moment of total despair on earth was about to be met with an unprecedented honor from the heavens. Just look at this contrast. It's mind-blowing. On earth, he's wounded and has nowhere to go. But from heaven, he gets a direct invitation from God himself. This was not a coincidence. The night journey is seen as a divine comfort, a reward for his unshakable faith in the face of just unimaginable hardship.
So what was this journey? Well, it's known as the Isra and Mi'raj, and it really has 2 distinct parts. The Isra was the horizontal part, the night journey from the sacred mosque in Mecca all the way to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Then came the Mi'raj, the ascension, which was the vertical journey from Jerusalem up through the 7 heavens. And that stop in Jerusalem was just profoundly significant. He gets there, and all the prophets who had ever come before him, all 124,000 of them are there, and he is asked to lead them all in prayer. This was a massive symbolic moment, establishing him as the leader and the seal of all the prophets. It was also here that he was offered milk and wine, and his choice of milk was seen as a sign of his connection to humanity's pure natural faith.
From Jerusalem, the ascension began. At each of the 7 heavens, he was greeted by a different prophet. I mean, imagine the honor, being welcomed by Adam, the father of humanity, by Jesus and John, by Joseph, Moses, and finally, way up in the highest heaven, by Abraham. Each meeting was an affirmation of his mission, a link in this incredible, unbroken chain of revelation.
Now, in the presence of God, the prophet received the central act of Islamic worship, prayer. But the initial command was for 50 daily prayers. 50. On his descent, he met Moses, who, based on his own experience, advised him to go back and ask for a reduction. After some negotiation, the obligation was mercifully reduced to 5, but with the divine promise that those 5 would carry the spiritual reward of the original 50.
But of course, this divine miracle had to be brought back down to earth. And as you can imagine, trying to describe a round trip to Jerusalem and the heavens in a single night to the people of Mecca, well, that was going to be the ultimate test of faith for both him and for his followers.
And the reaction was exactly what you'd expect. His chief enemy, Abu Jahl, gathered everyone he could to publicly mock him. The story was so unbelievable that some of his own followers, whose faith was still new, actually renounced Islam right on the spot. For his enemies, this was the perfect ammo to call him a madman.
But then came this absolutely defining moment, when skeptics rushed to his closest friend, Abu Bakr, to tell him the crazy story, expecting him to finally abandon the prophet. His response was immediate. It was absolute. He didn't hesitate for a second. His faith wasn't in the plausibility of the story, it was in the truthfulness of the man telling it. And that unwavering belief earned him the title, As-Sadiq, the truthful.
To prove his journey wasn't just a dream, the prophet offered testable piece of evidence. He described a Meccan trade caravan he'd seen on its way back, detailing one of its camels and predicting its exact time of arrival. And when the caravan did arrive, exactly as he had described, his staunchest opponents, well, they still refused to believe.
So the situation was now unmistakable. Taif had been a brutal failure, and Mecca was more hostile than ever. The night journey provided huge spiritual comfort, but it didn't solve the earthly problem of finding a safe place for his community. So the search continued, this time focusing on the tribes who visited Mecca for the annual pilgrimage.
And this is where a glimmer of hope finally appeared. During one pilgrimage, he met 6 men from a city called Yathrib. They listened, and they believed. The very next year, 12 of them came back and took a formal pledge. The year after that, a whole delegation of 75 people, including 2 women, returned to make a second, much more serious pledge, an offer of full political and military protection if he would come to their city.
After that first pledge, the prophet sent just one man back with the new converts to Yathrib. His name was Musab ibn Umair. He was the very first ambassador of Islam, and his mission was to teach the people about the faith and prepare the city for what was coming. The success of this one man was just astounding.
What's so interesting about this second pledge is that it was way more than just a declaration of faith. This was a full-blown political treaty. They committed to loyalty, pledging to listen and obey no matter what. They committed to action, to command good and forbid evil. And crucially, they committed to defense, promising to protect him as they would protect their own families. In response to their incredible offer, the prophet sealed the pact with this powerful declaration. He wasn't just accepting their protection, he was making himself one of them. This statement just erased any lines between him and his new followers, creating a bond of total, unbreakable solidarity.
With that pledge, the final piece was in place. A safe haven had been secured, and soon after, divine permission was granted for the migration, the Hijrah, to begin. One by one and in small groups, the Muslims of Mecca began secretly slipping out of the city, often leaving their homes and all their wealth behind, to make the long journey to Yathrib. And that brings us to our final, crucial question. His followers were escaping, but the leaders of Mecca weren't just going to let their number one enemy simply walk away. He was under constant surveillance. So how would the prophet himself, the most wanted man in the city, pull off his own escape? Well, that's a story for another time.